Hello and welcome back to the Karma Stories podcast. I'm Rob and I hope you are having a wonderful day today. In today's episode from Malicious Compliance, a student turns passive-aggressive perfection into classroom karma, a gym bro insists he doesn't need a spotter, and we wrap it up with one of the most satisfying speakerphone smackdowns you'll ever hear. Let's jump right in. In this story, a student gets blamed for slowing down the group, so he does exactly what they said and leaves them to deal with the mess alone. This story comes to us from Mustard Unavailable. Oh, I should just leave it to you, since I'll only slow you down. Don't mind if I do. This happened in grade 3 when I was 8 years old. It was in the early 2000s in the Philippines. Students would be put in groups. After school, we'd have to clean the room, especially the floors, sweep, and wax. It was the student's responsibility to clean and keep it clean. The duty was once a week per group, and during that 1 week, I had to go visit relatives for a funeral. When I got back, my group mates told me that they did the job faster, and that stung, I'm not gonna lie. When it was our turn, they complained to me how slow we were at cleaning up and blamed me for it. That stung again, not gonna lie. So the following week still hurt, and not wanting to get blamed again, I decided to go home and not help. As I was making my way out, I was the first person to leave. My teacher asked me what I was doing. Told her since I was just gonna slow my group down, I might as well just go home. Teacher, known for being a living bomb and can set off at any moment, looked at me and my group and said, okay. Went home feeling oddly pleased with myself. Then, a cousin who was a couple classes over and had cleaning duties told her mom, who then told my mom, and how my teacher gave my group the what for. It was so loud, my cousin could recite it verbatim. Basically, teacher said my group was fast, but they weren't good at cleaning. They would forget to sweep areas and even leave more trash behind. They were fast, yes, but it was only by a few minutes. They would rush and do a piss poor job. She had them stay longer to make sure it's all cleaned properly. Next day, my group mate apologized to me and never complained again. And guys, I know this sounds like it's exploitive, but back then, this was normal for us. It wasn't great. OP added an edit down at the bottom. It says, edit, thanks for all the replies. This was around 2000 to 2001, and during that time, physical punishments were still common and encouraged. I remember if you didn't do your homework, you'd have to place your hands on your desk palm up, and the teacher would smack it with their stick, which was made of bamboo. Another was getting hit on the butt with the stick. Then there was the ear pulling, and one teacher liked to pull the hair and skin behind the ears. I don't have great memories of that time. Nowadays, I know the physical punishments aren't allowed and are labeled as abusive. I also remember that during 4th grade, our classroom was hardly cleaned because the teacher was the first to leave and the last to arrive. Jumping down to the comments on this one, we have one from a user called Jeannie Small Beanie. It says, a lot of countries do this actually. I kinda like that it teaches kids to clean up after themselves, and that making a big mess of things will inconvenience them later on, or their friends and classmates, instead of the mess just going away by the next day, because of the night shift janitor. Good on both you and your teacher for that unintentionally collaborated revenge. Okay, besides all the other stuff that OP brought in the edit down below about the teachers not treating them very well, I love the idea of having the kids clean up the classroom after the school day is done, before they're allowed to leave. It really would teach them some responsibility, and a lot of kids out there these days aren't getting that sense of responsibility from home at all. Parents kinda suck these days. In this story, a grounded farm girl isn't allowed to drive to school, so she finds a 4-legged loophole her parents never saw coming. This story comes to us from JustMe5588. Teenager grounded from driving gets even. Years ago, when my youngest daughter was a teen, she had a truck that she would drive to and from school. Well, as most teens are, she managed to get herself grounded. Don't remember why now. Dad took her keys and grounded her for 2 weeks. This meant she would be riding the school bus to and from school or walking. We live on a farm just outside a very small town. The high school was just over a mile from our house as the crow flies. Our daughter was also a barrel racer and had a few horses. Her horses had been trained to go home if they lost their rider, our daughter, as our daughter often rode her at the arena on the other side of town, or way out far in the fields. If we saw the horse without the rider, we knew there was a problem, way before cell phones. Her dad and I worked off the farm and left early in the mornings, well before our daughter would go to school, and didn't get home till around 6 in the evening. For some reason, she wasn't complaining too much about being grounded from her truck. What we found out later, actually much later, was that she was riding her oldest horse bareback and just a halter to school, and then turning the horse loose to go home. A friend would give her a ride home, and she would put her horse back in the proper field before we got home. All we could do is shake our head, as she didn't drive her truck to school for 2 weeks, but also didn't ride the school bus. After all, what 16-year-old farm girl would want to ride the bus? Jumping down to the comments on this one, we have one from a user called Has No Tact. It says, "A mile? Why were vehicles involved at all? I walked 1.5 miles to school at 16, and taking a car for such a short distance would have sounded ridiculous to me at the time. I guess if walking wasn't safe, but if it's not safe to walk, it's not really safe to ride a horse there either." This one really makes me wonder about the first time that OP's daughter took the horse to the school. Were they really worried that the horse was gonna make it back home and still be there by the time they got out of school? I'm betting you they were worried all day long, especially a barrel rider who is probably very, very attached to their horses. In this story, a gym employee offers to help a friend lifting heavy, but when the offer is rejected, he follows orders and walks away, for now. This story comes to us from Prestigious Store 22. My buddy did not need a spotter for his bench press attempt. When I was working at the gym many years ago, a friend of mine came in to work out. It was a slow time of the day, so very few people were working out and the gym was a small one. The area was split in 2 parts, divided by a fairly large U-shaped bar. One quarter was filled with a few benches, dumbbells, and barbells, and the other area was filled with machines. My buddy was a really nice guy, but tended to overestimate his abilities. Recently, he surpassed the magic milestone of a 100-kilogram bench press, and his plan for this day was to repeat this. I am very aware of his abilities and asked him if he wanted me to spot him during his bench press. It's always recommended to use a spotter when bench pressing with weights near your maximum. He said, "No, I feel really strong today, so I don't need a spotter." I asked, "Are you sure?" "Nope, I really can do this, so I don't need your help for this." I offered to spot one more time, but he was very sure he could do it without me spotting him, so I went to the other side of the bar area and just waited. It did not take long, and I heard some groaning and puffing, and eventually he shouted my name, asking to help him. So, like the good friend that I am, I hurried to the other side of the bar, where I found him with the barbell on his chest, very helpless. I laughed for about 10 seconds, and then removed the barbell from his chest. We had a good laugh together after this, and he never learned. Jumping down to the comments on this one, we have one from a user called Red Kathy. It says, "Glad he was okay. That could have ended real bad for him. I know some gyms who'd ban you for lifting without a spotter." Another commenter down below called R Tally said, "There are 2 reasons why using safeties is a good idea. First is failure to complete a lift. Dumping the weight or doing a chest roll works for the lighter weights. A spotter is helpful in this scenario too, assuming the spotter is paying attention. Safeties always work and typically only hurt your pride when used. Second is a catastrophic failure, such as using a backward grip or a muscle or tendon problem. A spotter cannot react fast enough to help with a drop bar. One of my lifting buddies had a pec tear while lifting. Messed him up when the bar came down, no safeties. At the same gym, another lifter who had a spotter dropped the bar on his face. He left in an ambulance. I prefer to lift in a rack with safety set to just below chest height with my back arched. That way, I can have the bar touch my chest, but not end up hurt if the bar drops. I just want to focus on the last sentence in this story that says, "and he never learned," because that tells us that this guy is stubborn and having weights on his chest didn't teach him any lesson at all. That also makes this guy dangerous, but fortunately only to himself in this scenario. By the way, those safety bars don't make you look like a wuss or any less of a person. They're there for a reason, so you don't die. Use them. In this story, a cashier is forced to abandon their register to fulfill a strange customer request. So they follow the list exactly. Maybe a little too exactly. This story comes to us from Lost in Kyoto. I followed the list. Over 20 years ago, I worked as a cashier at a grocery store. The place was enormous and sold a wide variety of food from standard groceries to expensive delicacies. One busy Saturday morning, when we had lots of customers and the lines were long, I was called away from my lane to the front desk. The manager on duty was speaking with a well-dressed woman. I was told that she wanted someone to get her groceries for her and bring them to the front desk for checkout. In the before times, this was a very unusual request. Our store did not offer personal shopping. I hadn't even heard of it before. I respectfully tried to communicate that by leaving my lane, we would be inconveniencing the other customers because checkout lines would just get longer. I was told to just get it done and handed the woman shopping list. Here's where my malicious compliance kicked in. First, it had already been a long morning for me and my feet were killing me, so I took my time. Second, the list didn't specify how many or what brand when it came to groceries. It just said basic things like apples, meat, tomato sauce, etc. So I delighted in selecting the very finest of foods, and lots of them. Pounds and pounds of expensive specialty organic apples, meat, prime rib, and filet mignon. Tomato sauce, I distinctly remember selecting 8 jars of an imported sauce that cost $16 each. I wheeled the cart back to the front desk almost an hour later, where the woman was still waiting. The manager rang everything up, and it came to over $600. The woman balked and tried to argue, but somehow the manager had grown a spine in the hour I was away, because he told her that we had already honored her request. She could either choose to pay the bill or do her own shopping. She decided to pay the bill, although she was clearly unhappy. I went back to my lane, and I never heard another word about it. Jumping down to the comments on this one, we have one from a user called TechNot. It says, I'm surprised the manager didn't congratulate you on the massive upsell. Another commenter down below called Coder Joe 1 said, seems like it was also your manager's malicious compliance. That's exactly what I was thinking on this one. The manager made her pay for all the groceries that OP brought up, or they could go get them themselves. In the hour that OP was away from that front desk, I'm guessing that customer was becoming more and more of a Karen as OP took a long time to get back. So, by the time that OP got back there, the manager just didn't want to deal with them anymore and put them in their place, said buy them or go get your own. I love that manager. In this story, a bitter club member makes one snide comment too many and ends up triggering a moment no one at the dinner table will ever forget. This story comes to us from Superb Raccoon. You like attention, do you? Here, let me get you some. So, I am telling this story because the friend involved recently died from a short but valiant battle with cancer. She went from the doctor saying, well, we need to do a biopsy, it's probably nothing, to a call from her 5 weeks later saying she was going into hospice care, with just a few days to live. But saying goodbye brought up some tough memories, and a funny one. 24 years ago, and I go to a meetup, a tiki club that met weekly, but not only at tiki bars. 50s-style diners were also part of the club. It was at a local dessert place with a 50s diner flair that also served some good coffee. I think this is my second or third meetup with them, and it is a good group. Several of them rode motorcycles or even Vespa scooters, as I did, an old 70s Honda CB550. I sit down with my coffee, and am talking with one of the guys who just bought a new Triumph Bonneville when someone comes up to the table, sits down, and takes a drink of my coffee. What the actual F? I look over, and it was, to my utter astonishment, Wayward. Wayward, which was her nickname, was an old girlfriend. We had a short but enjoyable summer together after I graduated from high school, and she was working before going off to college. She went off to college, me to the Navy, and we lost track of each other. This being the days before the internet. I had been married for 15 years at this point and had a child. While she was single, it was strange but platonic friendship that revolved around the meetup club. The dessert diner was a favorite, and every time I would get a coffee, she would steal it and drink from the other side. It was a thing we had. It was a good way to get out of the house as I worked from home, and that could be isolating, but it was not without its problems. One of the older women in the club was a real attention grabber and instigator. She really did not like Wayward, who wasn't out there causing her problems. But Wayward did a lot for the club, and it showed up Miss Attention Grabber. My wife, well, she had no interest in the club, and she saw it as a chance for her to hang out with her friends down the street or have them over. She thought the thing with Wayward was cute and charming. My wife has zero jealous bones in her body and cannot stand attention grabbers. She laughed when I told her the latest Miss Attention Grabber's antics. Oh, and a true redhead's temper. So several years of friendship and the club go by with various amounts of harassment and whispered rumors by Miss Attention Grabber. It was the yearly club planning dinner, and Miss Attention Grabber had had more than her share of box wine. Wayward, who got tied up with a patient and was late, came in after the dinner and gave me a hug. Miss Attention Grabber said in a loud stage whisper to everyone, "Gee, I wonder what Mrs. OP would think of that. Maybe someone should tell her." I saw red. I pulled out my phone and speed dialed my wife. "Oh, you have something to say to my wife, do you, Miss Attention Grabber? Let me help you out here." I put it on speakerphone. "Hey honey, someone here has something to say to you about me and Wayward." "Oh, hand me over to her, dear." And when Mrs. Attention Grabber tried to say something, Mrs. OP let her temper fly. She read her the riot act, mocked her, ripped her up one side and down the other, and told her to keep her nose out of other people's business if she liked the way it looked. She would never hurt anybody, but it sounded like she would, and that was what counted. The club heard it. It grew silent. Miss Attention Grabber was imitating a fish out of water. She was turning even pinker than the wine could account for. Then my wife started to laugh, which her laugh is very infectious. Other people started to laugh. Miss Attention Grabber started to really turn pink, then ran out of the room. A 60-year-old woman crying like a toddler. Well, in the spirit of the Tiki Club, here is to you, Wayward, fair winds and following seas. Jumping down to the comments on this one, we have one from a user called Orange Dutchbag who summed this up in a way that many commenters did. It says, "My morning cup of coffee will be toasted to Wayward and your hilarious wife. Good story." Alright, I'm looking for some opinions from you guys on this one because I know that OP's wife was completely okay with the relationship OP had with Wayward. But would you be okay if a woman was drinking out of the other side of your man's coffee cup? And keeping in mind that this is a woman that OP dated in the past, even if it was only for a summer, there was something there. So now I'm curious what you think. Is it crossing a line or is it just harmless nostalgia? Let me know in the comments. I love hearing your takes. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to follow or subscribe so you don't miss the next one. I thank you for watching and listening. I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you tomorrow.